Hi, Daniel. It's a pleasure.
HK, the pleasure is mine. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. Fantastic, man. Listen, I saw the movie last night. Very impressed.
Great. That's what we like to hear.
This wasn't a normal type of role. I mean, you went all in physically. When was the moment when you realized that maybe you took this a little too far?
It was pretty early on, to be honest. I got given the script way back in 2022 when we just wrapped Land of Bad, and at that point I was still 42 years old, but I was still in pretty good shape. But I started from the very beginning. I started with a boxing coach, a jiu-jitsu coach, a Muay Thai coach, and I started just doing everything separately. And it was about the time that I then started putting them all together and discovered that MMA is a completely different, unique sport all on its own. And then when I progressed off just hitting pads into being hit back in return,
Right.
I discovered that's going to be a whole different thing. And then I realized that, in your mid 40s, and I came from a triathlon background, that I had spent 25 or 30 years teaching my hips to only go in one direction. And for running and cycling, it was very linear. All of a sudden, every coach that I was working with was like, dude, your hips have to go different directions. And so that was when the pain started, pretty much. But that was early on, man.
I'm sure training to get actually in the cage with an MMA fighter is a lot different than just being an actor pretending to be an MMA fighter. And you keyed in on that a little bit just now with going from your linear hips to having to move in all directions. So take me down that road even deeper.
Physical side, I could do. I came from a sports background, and historically throughout my career, I've been fortunate enough to, whether I've played a jockey or a special forces soldier or something else, I get to learn highly specialized and high intensity sort of skill sets very quickly from the best, and I love it. It's one of the greatest parts of my job. So I knew the process of training to just learn the physicality of what a punch is meant to look like and a kick was meant to look like and all this sort of stuff that would come, and I just was in the right hands, and if I could keep my body moving and uninjured, which I was able to, that would all come. But the mentality of a fighter, the mentality of a lifetime martial artist, the energy, the weight of a natural born fighter is something that didn't come naturally to me, and that was a very unique um, research kind of process where I was listening to audiobooks from the greats like George St. Pierre. I was taking myself off to fight camp in Thailand by myself, not with the film, but going off and fighting and learning. And by the time I progressed over the course of a couple of years, because the film was on again, off again for a number of years, but I kept my training up. I knew that this role was special. I knew that there was something I could do that was special here that I'd never done before in my career. And I had Russell Crowe in my corner championing me. But the energy that these men and women carry was the challenging part, and I really had to tap into an area that was a whole new part of my skill set.
So now you're talking to your hips. You're trying to get them to do things that they've never done before. Tell me the moment when you realized I might get hurt doing this.
I can tell you exactly when it was. It was in Thailand. It was in Koh Samui. It was the film had been greenlit now for a third time, and we're like, guys, if this is third time lucky, because if it falls off again, everyone's walking away. And they're like, no, 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 it's on. And I just finished a 6 month theatre tour around Australia of a big two-man, very intense classic theatre play, theatre performance. And they said, hey, the film's greenlit again. I said, sure it is. Yeah, and it's going, and this was August, and they're like, it's going at the end of November. I was like, guys, you're kidding me. That's 2 months. I've got 2.5 months to train. They're like, yep, off you go. So I took myself up to Thailand, and I was training in a professional MMA sparring class at a gym called Super Pro in Koh Samui, and a fantastic Portuguese MMA fighter who was out there training for a film. We were sparring. It was early on in the session. he got me up against the cage, stripped me around, got onto my back, and had me in a rear naked choke, and I was completely powerless, completely helpless, being completely choked out by a professional MMA fighter. And he let me tap out, and I of course had a panic attack of no blood and no oxygen, and the air in Thailand is thick anyway. It's 100% humidity, and I looked around and I didn't know anybody, and I was like, and I just went, "What the hell are you doing here? You're a 44-year-old actor who's just come off the stage, darling, and is pretending to be an MMA fighter surrounded by these guys are from Portugal and then England and America and like and they didn't know I was an actor. I was purporting to be, a fighter. And then anyway, they realized like, hey man, what are you doing here? I was like, I'm training for a film. They're like, great, let us help you. And so they became absolutely wonderful. But that moment there on the mats in Koh Samui, I just remembered I was like either every instinct of my body was walk to the change rooms, get out of your gear, go home, you stupid. And in that moment I went, all right, no, you got to keep if you're going to play this role, you got to keep going. And so I walked back on the mat and jumped back into class and off we went.
You've done lots of Ironman competitions off screen in real life. And in addition to the story you just shared with us, I'm curious, did that type of training and vigorous athletic ability aid you in getting ready for this role?
Oh, definitely, definitely, definitely. Look, I started triathlon when I was 11 or 12 years old, so back in Sydney, swim, cycle, run. It's even though you're training in a squad, in a training squad, it's still a very, individual sport, particularly when it comes to race day, and particularly by the time you're up around those Ironman distances, which for me were, between 9.5 and 10 hours or 10.5 hours of racing out there, anywhere from China, Australia, New Zealand, all the way out to Kona, Hawaii, which I raced the Hawaiian Ironman, which was my goal. But it gives you a great ability to endure pain and discomfort. Is a great discipline needed in your training because you have to get those sessions done. You have to get 2-3 sessions a day done, and you have to bank the miles, and you have to just get out there. And there's days where you don't want to wake up. There's days where you don't want to go that far. There's days where you don't want to go and do that session. You don't want to go and run 10 miles off a 100-mile bike ride on a Saturday afternoon by the time you're getting off your bike. So the mental discipline of Ironman has transferred into my career. Full stop. That's been something that has allowed me a certain level of discipline and commitment. And there's few things in the film and television game that are as challenging or as uncomfortable as racing Ironman. So when you're on set on a night shoot under a rain machine for 6 hours, you're like, man, this is nothing. I spent 10 hours in the lava fields of Hawaii. Like this
Right.
is okay. Um, but in terms of the self belief, there's a great self belief and self talk, and you end up with I took away a great self dialogue and an ability to have that inner chat, and that inner chat is very important, particularly when you're in a cage with someone else trying to beat the daylights out of you, be that an actor or a real fighter. So this one took a lot of positive self chat and self belief. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking while I was watching the movie. I mean, you've done a lot of action roles, but this one had to take so much more physicality.
Yeah, well, this one was so far removed from anything I'd ever learnt or done. I'd never fought before. I'd never had a boxing lesson before. I'd never. I've done a little bit of basic jujitsu once, training for strike back. But in terms of combat sports, in terms of I didn't have a martial arts background growing up, so yeah, it took. This one was so far, yeah, removed from my natural sort of skill set that it took a lot of sort of belief and self belief and faith and just risk taking and just going right, throw yourself in, because I believed in the story, I believed in the
Mhm.
character, I believed in the project and the people involved, and I knew that I could do something really special with. I believed I could do something really special with this role, and this whole project that could speak to people and speak to people in a way that this film isn't just a big flashy MMA film. It's a story that's got so much heart and complexity that talks about family, marriage, fatherhood, complex fractured relationships, forgiveness, redemption, as well as
Friendship, overcoming defeat, coming back from hardships in life.
a man fighting to reclaim and rediscover his identity and his purpose and his motivation in his life.
For me, one of the more powerful scenes, it was one of the more subtle scenes, actually. And I don't want to give any spoilers away, but when your movie wife is talking to you and she does not want you to get back in the ring, but she knows that this is something you have to do. You know, you are not going to be happy unless you get through this. It's kind of like, you know, to get to the other side, you've got to go through the fire first.
Yeah, no, exactly that. It is who you are, and I love you, but
Right.
I can't stop you, and you can't live at 80% of whole anymore, or whatever it may be. Kelly Gale playing my wife, playing Luciana, did an
Yeah.
extraordinary job. You know, it was a big challenging role for her, and you know we've had Herb Dean came and saw the film with his wife at an early screening not that long ago, and Herb's wife actually came out in tears, going, "You've represented our battle and what we have to go through so well." And so the female points of view in this film have been beautifully handled by the performers and by Tyler, our filmmaker.
It was really nice seeing that dynamic instead of just, you know, all the fighting in the ring. I really enjoyed that part of the movie. This is not your first time working with Luke Hemsworth and Russell Crowe. So, what, if any, energy did that bring to the set?
Oh, absolutely. Look, there's a reason, you know, Marty Scorsese and his gang continue to work together. You know, there's a reason each each one of these, you know, great filmmakers has got their cast that they keep coming back to, because the more times you work together, the more creative freedom you have, the more shorthand, unspoken contact and communication you can have. And also, you know, you also have the ability to look at each other and go, "Hey guys, this isn't good enough. Let's
Yeah.
crank it up." Or you know, where there's such trust and understanding that you're never tiptoeing around people's feelings getting hurt for the sake of improving what we're doing. So Russell, we had it at the beginning of the shoot, and Luke came in at the end. And so Russell came in, you know, obviously sets the standard very high, and
Yeah.
that was a gift, you know, and we had a couple of weeks of just Russell and I, you know, as you said, working on some of those really nice subtle scenes as well, which were beautiful, as well as some of the big, you know, pumping kind of action scenes and
Yeah.
training scenes and stuff like that. So Russell elevates every scene and every set that he's on and every scene that he's in, and he really set the standard. And you know, I've worked with him 3 times now. The first time we were co-stars, but he was very much the lead, and I was very much a supporting player in Poker Face that he also directed. So he was also my director. Second time was Land of Bad with Luke, with Liam, with Milo Ventimiglia, Ricky Whittle, and Russell and I were working more like a theater troupe. Well, he was rewriting stuff, and I was bouncing
Yeah.
around trying to pick it up. So then you come into Beast, where he's now supporting me and going, right, this is your turn, man, and I'm going to support you and back you into this. It was a great honor, and it was a great privilege. And then fast forward a couple of months, where I've been in every scene every day. We filmed all the final fight sequences up in Thailand in front of 10,000 people at real One Championship events. I'm crawling to the line with broken bones and torn muscles and
Oh God.
exhaustion and stuff. And then Luke Hemsworth shows up. And not only is one of my greatest mates in the world, he's an extraordinary actor with extraordinary energy, brings on this beautiful character that you can't help but love to hate, with those sparkling blue eyes. And when Lukey comes on set, he was like a lighthouse in the ocean as I was crawling to the line, and he carried us safely home with his energy and his ability. So it was great to have him there. So no, those kind of recurring relationships are extraordinarily important, I think, in the world of filmmaking.
And it shows. The name of the movie is Beast. It's out this weekend. It stars this fine man, Daniel MacPherson, also Luke Hemsworth and Russell Crowe. The movie's screenplay is co-written by Russell as well. Get out to theaters and check it out now. Thanks so much, Daniel.
Hey, Chad, appreciate it very much, my friend. Thank you so much.